Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode on the Squat Success podcast. And really excited today. Today we have the lovely Sabah here with us. So me and Sabah actually met for the first time this year in Florida, not even in the UK. Oh, no, that's a lie. Actually, we met once last year, didn't we, in Birmingham at the event?
We did.
Then we met in Florida and really connected, and it was great fun. So I won't say too much, but Sabah, do you want to introduce yourself and who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, thanks, Bobby, for the lovely, exciting intro. I'm Dr. Sabah. I am a fairly recent practice owner. So my husband and I, Dr. George and myself, we around a year ago, just over a year ago, bought the practice that we were working in as associates in Shropshire. As Bobby's already said, we met Bobby last year at an event, and we just really hit it off and got chatting, and then got to know each other better at an event in Florida earlier this year. That's me.
Yeah, fantastic. So if we just rewind a little bit then, Sabas. So when you were, how long were you working as an associate for in that practice then?
So, well, for anybody that actually knows anything about me, I'm not really clinical. I hate teeth. I have always hated the clinical aspect of dentistry. George, on the other hand, absolutely loves it. So George had worked there for about 7 or 8 years as an associate. I had worked there maybe 2 or 3, mainly doing facial aesthetics and treatment planning. So seeing the new patients, doing all the checkups, planning the treatments, kind of dually clinically doing that, and also sort of being a TCO in surgery while doing that without realizing that that's what I was doing. And that's how that started, really.
Okay, yeah, no, fantastic. And then what happened to cause you guys to buy that practice then? Was it something that was planned? Was it in the pipeline that it was always going to happen? Had you thought about practice ownership, prior to that? Had you ever even thought about setting up a squat? What was kind of the pathway there?
George, I think he'd always had in the back of his mind that one day he'd like to own his own practice. It would give him, the freedom, clinical freedom, more control over things, and to practice in the way that he wants, and to have his team and things like that. And he'll tell you this himself. I don't think he had a clue what it actually entailed. Like, having bought, you realize that months and months into it, but that was the notion he had in his head. Conversely, for me, that was my worst nightmare, because for me, it was a case of, okay, this is something I don't really enjoy. I don't really like this aspect of it. I never have done. I'm trying to come away from this profession, or, clinical dentistry. And in my mind, I thought buying a practice would just pull me right back into that thing that I really don't like. So there was a bit of, oh, he wants this, I don't want this. But we sort of plodded along. The practice at the time was owned by a lovely husband and wife team, also both dentists, who we're actually good friends with. And, we've always got along with them really well. And they were coming to a point where they were wanting to retire and step down. And similarly, the wife part of the husband-wife team, she was also non-clinical, even though she's a qualified dentist. She had a very similar experience to me and really didn't like the clinical aspect of dentistry. So she became kind of the manager, and he was very much the clinical, the principal, and that was their deal. And when they decided that they were going to retire, they approached us and they said, look, you guys have got really similar core values to us. We don't really want to sell to a corporate. It's a small family-run, independent, predominantly private practice. We know you'll look after the patients. They know you. We know you'll look after the team. We know you'll take the business where it needs to go next. And we really trust you. And at the time, we were actually at a bit of a crossroads. George had been offered a couple of amazing jobs down in London, which is where I lived for 7 or 8 years, and it's where I did my degree and everything. Always wanted to go back to the city. So we were in this position where we had kind of these options of, we get up, we go back to London, and we leave Shropshire, or we jump both feet in and we do this. And it felt wrong going to London, because at the time the principal he'd just started recovering from a cancer diagnosis. And we didn't want to leave him in that position. It felt really wrong after everything that he'd done to support us and help us. We had such a fantastic relationship with him. And part of me, if anybody knows me, you'll know I'll go, well, screw it. This will be an adventure. It'll be a different kind of adventure. Let's just do it. and let's jump in both feet forward. And if at any point we both feel like we're not enjoying this and it's not for us, we'll be honest, we'll be transparent, and we'll get out and probably book a ticket somewhere and go move abroad because that's the kind of thing we would do.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, there's a few things to explore there, definitely. So, I mean, number one, Shropshire is very, very different to London. So, I bet that must have been a little bit of a shock to the system.
Well, I grew up here, so for me, it was like coming back home. I never thought I'd end up back in Shropshire. I enjoyed growing up here and it was, it was lovely. And then I went and I did both my degrees at King's, one straight after the other. I did like a BSc and then I went straight into fast track dentistry. So did the 4 years there. So I was at King's for 7 years and I'm very much a city person. But as you can imagine, after that, and then a year's foundation training in Oxford, that was 8 years of non-stop being in something and trying to excel at something that my heart really, it just wasn't in it. So I felt quite burnt out. So the whole reason I actually moved back to Shropshire was my parents are there, I will move back home until I decide what I want to do because I was clearly burnt out and had some sort of quarter life crisis. And that was when I decided to pack a bag, as you know, and go off to South America for a few months, just out of the blue. That's when my addiction to travel started, solo backpacking.
Well, one of the things that I loved that you said was the fact that when you and George made that decision to buy the practice, is that you actually discussed it beforehand, that you were going to be open and transparent and honest about how you actually find the experience. And the fact that if we don't like it, we don't enjoy it, and it's not working out for us, we will just exit and we will do something else or go back into, associateship, whatever that would be for you, either of you both. And I think that is a fantastic level of self-awareness because I think what happens in dentistry is a lot is that there is a huge amount of people who don't enjoy practice ownership, who bought a practice, ended up in something that they really didn't want, and it brings me back to another point which you said earlier about George finding out that when you actually own a practice, it's very, very different, and it's not what you expected. Yeah, as an associate, I think every associate goes through that to some extent, without a doubt. But like I said, I just think it's fantastic that you have that level of awareness that actually, if it's not for us, we will just exit. Whereas I think the opposite happens in dentistry, and practice owners go into ownership not really expecting what's going to happen, don't enjoy it, get burnt out, and then unfortunately live the next 20, 30 years of their lives like that unhappy because they feel like they don't have another option because they've opted into this. Where the reality is there is always another option, there's always an exit, there's always something else you can do. You just have to turn your brain on, kind of get out that frame of mind and do that. But to have that realization right at the beginning, I think that's, pretty incredible.
Thanks. Yeah, we're very transparent with each other. We're very transparent with our team. We're very honest and we're very open. And I think that's really, really important. And as you know, having just met you, for the first time, we were very honest and transparent with you. And I do think it's really, really important to be able to have the right mindset going into anything. I feel that as dentists, we are so programmed to think a certain way, and most of us are so type A personality that once we've done something or we've started something, we feel like if we don't see this through, then we've somehow failed. And it just isn't the case, one size doesn't fit all. And I think it was James Martin that said this to me. Great guy. I know you're friends with him as well. He came up with this quote when we were on one of his courses. He put it on the screen. It said something like, if you believe you can, you're right. And if you believe you can't,
Yeah.
you're right. Either way, you're right. So basically, you can do whatever the hell you want. You just need to have the belief that you can do it and then follow it up with some action.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I've heard that quote many a time. Me and James have these conversations all the time, about this
Yeah.
how people just hold themselves back. There's so much, unlimited potential within everybody. It's just a matter of literally what you said is how you look at it in your own mind and how you frame it. And yeah, like I said, dentists, very, very much we get pushed into a certain pathway and we just assume that this is the natural thing for us, whether we like it or not. And then we almost trap ourselves. And it's about learning how to kind of unwind from that and think about, the bigger picture. It's a very, very big world we live in. Lots of opportunities, lots of exciting things, lots of exciting things outside of dentistry as well as within dentistry. There's never just one fixed pathway. It's not just associate, principal, the end, retire. There's lots of different streams to navigate along the way. So
Hmm.
rewind a little bit back to that comment that you made then about when you took over the practice and George especially finding out that it's a lot different to what you expected. So what happened? What was that process?
Think I think he realized very quickly that there was not just an amount to be done in the background to keep things ticking over day to day, week to week, but a huge amount to be done when you're trying to optimize systems and processes. And look, we took over a lovely practice with a lot of potential, but it had been in the same hands for about 35 years. And humans will be humans. And a lot of people, when they've been doing something for that long, they stop looking. So when you've lived in a house for 35 years, you stop seeing the cobwebs, you stop seeing the little scratches on the wall that might need a touch up, and metaphorically speaking. But when you come into somebody's house with fresh eyes and you haven't been looking at it for 30 years, you pick up on all of these things that are not quite right or a little bit rusty or could do with XYZ. And coming into it, you work in it as an associate and you think, fantastic. From an associate point of view, you've got your materials, your great kind of nursing support, team support, lovely environment to work in, nice patients, full books, all the stuff that you come in, you do your thing, you leave,
Yeah.
thumbs up. You've got things to take home with you, really. But then when you own it, you start uncovering things. You start looking at the amount that you're paying. And when you've got this massive business loan that the previous principal no longer had, it paid it all off. Huge business loan. And we took out a business loan when the interest rates were really, really high. We had no choice. It was probably the worst year and month to have closed a deal, but it had gone on for so long. We just did it. So you start looking at contracts, you start looking at suppliers, you start looking at what you're spending, you start looking at your systems, as I've said, and your processes, and you find that there aren't really any there. And the ones that are there are kind of like the staff's comfort of what the staff are used to doing over several years without really being checked in on. Because when staff have worked for you for 30 years, the comfortable thing to do is to just assume that they all know what they're doing and take a massive step back and not keep checking in. And human nature is, the more comfortable you get, the more things can you lose that sort of check in, and standards can kind of do this sort of thing. There was that. So there was the aspect of actually running it day to day in a way that made sense and was efficient, but also quality, patient care, all of that. Then the other aspect of it, of these are things we need to grow, looking at growing it in terms of treatments, revenue, patient journey, team training, all of that stuff. And for that to happen at the same time, whilst George is really clinical, I don't think he quite fully expected what was, and I didn't. I didn't either. Neither of us did. So that was a shock.
Hey, I bet. So I think, yeah, I think it's a shock to the system for anybody, to be fair, whether you open a squat or whether you buy an existing practice. As a clinical dentist, it's a huge amount of learning and it has to happen very, very, very quickly. And yeah, I think you can broadly categorize it into two categories, like what you were describing there. So the first one is really kind of internal operations and systems, and that's key aspect of, the actual management, the running of the practice. Second aspect is then, okay, now we know where we are with that and what the existing situation is. How do we then look at the growth of the business? And then what's the action plan for doing that? And the hardest thing is trying to do both of them together. Because you almost have to get your ducks in a row before you can kind of go to the next stage. Whereas often, I think a lot of practices just go to a marketing company and say, we want to grow, we want to do this or that, but they haven't actually fixed the operational side of the business first. So I have this conversation all the time with my marketing company. And, when they're, well, loads of different marketing companies, and they say the same thing over and over again. The practices that do really well with marketing and start looking at growth and whatever it is. I'm not saying you have to do marketing to grow. There's a huge amount you can do internally, but the general nooks and crannies is that if the first bit isn't fixed and nailed and done properly in the first place, there's no point doing the next bit because it's super hard to grow and it all becomes a jumbled up mess, basically.
So I totally 100% agree with what you've said. And it's really good to hear that be reflected back to us because after a year and few months of owning, we've done no marketing, nothing. We haven't even redone our website yet. It's being worked on in the background and it desperately needs to be done. But ultimately, we agreed, and we've spoken with the team about this, and we've agreed that there's little to no point inviting people into the house
Yeah.
when the house isn't ready to have guests. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
We're lucky in that it's a well-established brand and business in the community where we do get, via word of mouth, maybe 15, 20, 25 new patients every month to come and join a membership plan or, the bread and butter
Yeah.
exams, things like that. So we're very lucky in that sense, but we made that conscious decision that it would just get really out of hand and you spend all this money on marketing. You get all these people coming in, but you have no sort of lead management system. You have nobody to nurture and look after those patients and actually get bums in seats. And then no patient journey the way that we'd want to have a patient journey. So it has been in some ways frustrating because you think to yourself, come on, we should really be at this point by now. And I'm sure lots of other people feel that way. You never feel like you're where you should be. And the more you look around on social media or you go to events and things, you're like, wow, look at what these other people are doing. This is amazing. And you get a bit starry-eyed and it makes you kind of go, we should really be doing that. But my advice to anybody would be go to events, go to training, talk to people, connect with people, and learn. If somebody is doing something that you want to be doing, if you look up to them, learn from them, talk to them, connect with them, but don't ever feel like what's right for somebody else is right for you at the stage that you're at. And also, nobody really knows what really goes on behind, closed doors, or, you look at companies' accounts and nobody really knows what's going on. So focus on yourself, get your head down and really think about your why and where you want to be and what you want to do.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, social media is great in one aspect, but it's horrible in the other aspect, is in that often you see different personas, people doing different things, and often a lot of it's not even true. Which is the sad thing. So, ultimately you have to just keep the focus on yourself, no matter what anybody else is doing. It doesn't matter. It's like you said, learn if they're doing something great, take nuggets from it that you can apply to your business. But you have to really internalize that focus and keep that on yourself and your business and what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and don't compare that to anybody else ever. Everybody has completely different lives, they've got completely different lifestyles, they've got completely different families, different backgrounds, different levels of financial investment, different levels of financial backing. You cannot compare yourself to anybody else in the marketplace. You are just you. Focus on you, yourself. Just focus on making yourselves better, better, a little bit day by day. And ultimately, if you do that, you will get to where you want to get to, but you won't get there by being jealous and copying, trying to compete and catch up
Okay.
with other people. If that's what drives you, then that's wrong and it will lead to your failure. But if what drives you comes from the inside, about you wanting to do better for yourself and your business and the people you look after, then brilliant. That's where, true success, will come from.
Absolutely. I really like what you've just said. A lot of it, as you've said, is smoke and mirrors. And you have to keep that in the back of your mind all the time. You have to go back to your why of what you're doing. And if you're doing things for the right reasons, none of that will phase you. It just doesn't matter. Your inner circle is your inner circle. And what happens around that is often smoke and mirrors.
Exactly. No, brilliant. I had an interesting question, something that almost every dental practice owner struggles with to some extent, no matter what. And that is when you took over the existing practice, the great thing is because you work there, you know the team. But how did you manage making changes with such a well-established team who've been there for so long? And how did you navigate that process? How did you get them on
Yeah.
board? And how are you learning to become leaders and lead that team now?
I know you've asked me this often. It's not me because You know, you know full well it's probably the hardest thing that we've had to do. It's also the best thing that we've had to do. It's the best thing we've made ourselves persevere with. So when we took on the practice, of course, we thought everything was perfect, well-oiled machine and, all of that. And as I said, you start sort of seeing things and uncovering things and whatnot. And obviously, when you have a culture or a work culture that's been a certain way for so long, I think just knowing that and knowing what you're up against is very powerful. Don't go into it thinking it's going to be easy. That is the hardest part. I really think the hardest part of it is the people. It's not anything else, that the rest is like a numbers and a strategy game and the people. You need people on your side. You need people to understand you, not just to understand your vision, but to share that vision and to be inspired by that vision. I feel that people come to work for more than a paycheck. And to work in our business, to work with us in our practice, you need to be somebody that believes in more, that comes to it, comes to your job, not just because it's a job, but because there's more in it for you. And that isn't always numbers. You can pay and pay and pay, but the goalpost will always move and move and move. And it can't be the sole thing that drives you. And we learned that very early on. We had staff that were brilliant, that, we got on with so well personally as human beings, lovely people. But when it came to implementing changes, that it was sink or fly, really, at that point. We didn't have a choice. There were changes that had to be made, and they were definitely for the better. For the better of the team, for the patients, for the business. We felt that the best way was to be completely transparent, like I've always said. We've always been completely honest, and we were honest with the team at the time. Individually, we had consistent one-to-ones. So I did a lot of that, had consistent one-to-ones with the team members, talking to them all the time, giving them certain tasks to do, checking in on them all the time, and just making sure that they were on board with the vision. Now, I think a lot of them found it really, really difficult because, again, human nature, when you're used to what you're used to, and it's also that thing of it's the same building, the same place, and the ex-principal is now our associate 2 days a week. So you've got the same person working there. And I think I almost don't blame them. I don't. I can't blame them. They're used to a certain way of doing things and seeing things. And it's very, very hard to get out of those habits. And we were incredibly lucky that most of them actually came to me or to George, both of us together, and said, look, we really love you guys. We really like you, but we're finding this transition really, really hard because, everything else seems the same. And it's just mentally really difficult for us to now do this instead of that, or think this way instead of that way. And we totally admit that it's our own limiting beliefs, because we talked so much with them about mindset and beliefs and all the work we'd done on the courses. We brought it straight back to the clinic, and we had a lot of them resign, which actually I think was really, really good for us, because it means we don't have to go through the rigmarole of, letting people go, because it's never nice to let people go, especially when you've known them personally for so long. But it was really good for them as well, because what we kept reflecting back to them, which is the truth, is we care about you as people. We want you to be happy. We can see that over the last few weeks or months, you haven't been happy. Let us help you. If you're not going to be happy here, let us help you find the next step for you. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? We'll help you. And I think that's rare.
Yeah, no, I think that's an incredible answer, to be honest with you. So, I mean, the reason why I asked that question is because all the people that I know, people that I've helped who've ended up buying practices, is the number one thing they struggle with. Even with squats, it's still one of the hardest things, managing people. Difference with the squat is the benefit is you get to pick the people beforehand. It might not always be the right choice, but you have that option, that flexibility, whereas buying a practice, you don't. So you're having to manage those. And everybody always says the same thing. How do we manage the team? And they always say the same thing. It's the hardest thing ever, trying to get these people on board. And I think the way you explain that the way you've gone around that is really, really enlightening, because there's not a lot of people in the profession who think like that. You know, the fact that it was very transparent, very honest, and it's all about them as people and finding out what they want to do. And it's like you said, if they're not happy, you don't want to see other people unhappy within your business. And that obviously leads to a certain amount of lack of productivity as well, you know, on your behalf as running a business. But the fact that you care enough to actually help them and try and put them in the right direction, even if it's not within your business, is, you know, really exceptional, because not a lot of, you know, people think like that. And I think it's things like that which help people become brilliant leaders. And I think historically, there's not been a huge amount of that and that certain level of mindset within dental practices in the UK. And I think that's partly one of the reasons why there is such a big discrepancy between team members and principals when principals are buying these practices, because those teams have always been led in that particular way and they've never been kind of taught it and shared it in the framework the way you just described it, by actually sharing what is our vision, what are our values. It's not all about the money, you know, what do you want to get out of your life, you know, and where can we help you to get to that level.
Absolutely. And it's incredible because we went from, I think there was a team of maybe 12 or 13, including, associates and things like that. And out of the 12 or 13, I think we changed 7 in a course of 4 months. This happened organically in, over a course of 4 months. 7 out of the 13 gone, and then 5 brought in, because we also needed to make the team really streamlined and efficient, because there were too many staff for how many surgeries were actually being run. People weren't being utilized properly, and teams systems and things weren't being utilized properly. So it was sort of a blessing that we were able to be in that position where, yes, people left, but left on good terms. And it's incredible. A lot of them actually, and their families, still come back to us as patients. We still see them. Sometimes they pop in and just like have a coffee and see us, which is so nice. It's lovely.
Yeah, well, no, it's great. It's just a testament to yourselves, though. You know, the fact that they do that. You know, that they come back, which is brilliant. So, just a couple of final questions. So, the first one is, when you started to go down this journey, how did you start learning about it all? So, I get asked this all the time, and I was asked it by one of my mentors recently. You know, how did you even develop an interest in business? And we took a massive deep dive into it. But when you took over the practice, obviously you're no longer associates. So everything that you've just described, what you've been doing, you know, what was your process in terms of actually learning how? Nobody knows how to do all of this, you know, going from an associate
So
to principal. But so how did you actually learn about it?
a really good question, actually. And it's not one I've actually sat and reflected on, because we just put one foot in front of the other and we just go, 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 don't we? So I think one of the biggest things for us was very soon into it, the realization that I hated tea, but I come from a completely non-business. There's no business whatsoever in my family, none of my friends, nothing to do with business. But it was the first 8, 12 weeks of owning a practice. It was like a light bulb moment on my head. And I thought, I was like, this is it. I love this. The whole creating, growing, watching things come together, watching people grow and having a part in that, and watching what you've taught them and your systems and processes come to light, and the patients and the refurbs, and making everything look and be the way that you envision it to be. And I love it. I love all of that. I love the numbers as well. I love the numbers game, which, I mean, thank God for that, right, George? That he's got a business partner that actually loves all the stuff that he doesn't need to worry about that much. So the things that he hates, doesn't hate, but the things that he doesn't want to focus on, I love. And the things that I do hate, teeth, he loves. And it's a really great balance. So from that, we started talking to lots of people. So it was like building a network of people who already had owned for some time, looking at courses, looking at training. We were incredibly fortunate. We were already speaking with James Martin on a regular basis as associates. He was helping us, James was helping us with lots of things prior to that. And we were very honest with him and said, look, we're going to be taking over this practice and we're probably going to need your help. We don't know in what capacity yet. And if I'm honest, he was probably the first domino. He was the first,
Yeah.
domino there. And having worked together with him, we met so many people going to his live days and being on his WhatsApp group, and people share knowledge and people are similar to you and they're helpful. You find that if you go and you embed yourself into the right communities and you're open and you're excited and you tell people things and you open your ears and you just absorb everything and you're excited about it, you can go away and do so much and learn so much. Lots of our limiting beliefs were just thrashed out of the water, like it was just gone. And that opened up for the next domino and the next domino, because you meet somebody else and then you join a course there. Or and you do have to be careful with courses, and people will say things and they'll try to sell you all sorts of stuff. You know that. We've discussed this at great length. There are all sorts of people out there, but do your research, talk to people. And that's how we learned. We learned from talking to people that had already done it, people that we could resonate with, that we got on with as people, because the chances are if you get on with somebody as a person, you're going to share a lot more with them than just getting on with them personally.
Yeah, no, I love that analogy of the dominoes, because I actually feel like that, with my career, meeting individuals, mentors, and it's just led to the next person, and I think one of the great things you said there was about communities. There are some fantastic communities of dentists who are actually really open and willing to share a hell of a lot more. And then you have the opposite end of the community who hide absolutely everything. There is no right or wrong, each to their own.
No.
However, if you want to know certain things, there are many, many people out there where you can access that information from. But it's just about, like you said, putting yourself in those right communities and those right groups, and also being willing to share yourself and not be selfish.
Definitely. I really believe that if you put out good, if you're open and you put out lots of good, I do really, really think that it somewhere, somehow finds its way back to you. If you're positive and you put out good energy and you're helpful to people and honest with people.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. So, just a couple of final things, and we'll start wrapping up there, Sabah. There's a huge amount of value in what we've discussed. One thing would be what's next for the practice, and for yourselves. So, what's the plan for the next, 1 or 2 years? And then the second thing would be for anybody who's thinking about practice ownership or in the middle of buying a practice or going down that journey, what would be your top three tips for them?
Some pretty thinky questions today, Bob. So in terms of the next couple of years, we've now got our cornerstones. We've got Touchwood, an amazing team who we're still, it's still a training game. Most of them we've got from non-dental backgrounds, which by the way, game changer. Just putting it out there. Non-dental backgrounds, training them from scratch, no habits, no pre kind of thought ways of thinking. But we've got the cornerstones now, we've got a great team who can help us steer the ship into the vision that they also share with us. Systems and processes are now kicking in. We're going to look at actually utilizing more than 2.5 of the 4 surgeries that we've got. So that means bringing in associates. At the moment, it's, George, myself a little bit. I'll study like a day a week. Simon, who's the ex-principal, who's our current associate, but we will be looking for a couple of associates to help us grow. We have so many patients waiting to be seen on membership plans, fee per item, but also we want to bring things to the clinic that we don't do any of at the moment. So George does a lot of implants, but we'd love to bring clear aligners to the practice. We'd love to do more smile design and cosmetic work and things like that. So we're looking for associates to come in and help us grow the place. And we'd love to support them and give them what they need and give them what they want in order to be able to do that. That's really exciting for us to be able to do that. Refurbs. So we're currently planning a refurb of the ground floor to just make everything flow better. Somebody said to me the other day, "Oh, why do you want to make it look pretty?" I said, "Well, no, that's not what it's about. We're not trying to, it's not going to have like glass and marble, and I mean it's beautiful and practices like that look amazing, but for us the refurb is really about having the right flow in the practice and the right surgeries in the right places and all of that. So we're looking at that as well. And once it's a well-oiled machine, George and I would like in, 2 to 3 years to step back a little bit and have it be associate led so that everything is in the hands of our trustworthy team and we just keep sort of dipping in and making sure everybody's happy. But that's what we'd like to do. We really value the freedom of being able to travel and work from abroad and do lots of other things. So that's what's in it for us. And we already mentioned to you when we came to one of your live days and we were chatting with you that another another practice isn't, off the cards. Might be a squat. It might, and we'll hit you up again. That's sort of what we're thinking at the moment. But as you know, things always change, things are always evolving, and that could be totally different. You talk to me in 12 months, I might say something totally different, as you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. So, I mean, it's all really, really exciting stuff. Again, you made some great points there. Functionality is massive. That's something we discuss a lot when we're looking at setting up squat practices. Building, you can make it look as nice as you want, but if it's got no functionality and your patient flow and your patient journey doesn't work within that remit, it's not going to work. It's not going to be a success. And you got the opportunity with squat, obviously, to do it right from the outset. So fix that first, and then you can do whatever else you want with it afterwards. So that's a great point. The rest of it, like I said, I'm 100% sure you will get there without a doubt. Just a matter of time. So final point then, your top three tips then for anybody who's going into practice ownership in the journey or just starting out.
First thing I would say is go and talk to people that have recently done it and are doing it already. Talk to them and get them to be really honest with you about how your day-to-day life is going to be, how your weekends are going to look, how it's going to feel, how taking time out is going to feel. And don't just talk to them. Go and visit them at their practices. Go and see what they're doing. Look at their team. Look at their lifestyle. Look at their work lifestyle. So that's the first thing I'd say. Talk, talk, talk. Listen, listen, listen. Second thing I'd say is tell yourself it's going to be really, really hard because it is. It's if you go into it thinking, well, it's going to be easy, it's going to be even harder. So have the right mindset. And if you feel you have limiting beliefs, which we all do, positively and consciously work on those in whatever way possible. Listen to podcasts, read books. Again, talk to people that you find inspirational. Find mentors. Mentors are amazing. Now you get the right mentor, you're done, you're sorted because you can always turn to them and learn from them and they'll guide you. And the third thing I'd say is nothing cannot be undone. There's nothing that you do that's going to be the end of the world. And always keep that in the back of your mind. Even the things that go wrong, and they will, things will go wrong, are a double-edged sword. You'll always take something from it and learn to be excited about the things that go wrong. Because if everything was going to go right, I mean, you wouldn't grow, you'd have nothing to learn from, and it would be a little bit boring.
Yeah,
So
100%. It's
that would be my thing. Have fun with it. Be excited about it. And be honest with yourself and the people around you, and tell yourself that if you stop being excited about it, you're either going to do something to get out of it and change the game, or you're going to change the game internally and change your business so that you're excited again.
Yeah, I absolutely love those. Brilliant points. That last one especially reminded me of one of the speaks at the last event last weekend that we were at, where they were
Mhm.
talking about if we always had certainty, life would be very, very boring because you would just know the answer to everything and you'd know exactly what's coming. But,
No,
the
absolutely.
key thing is, how you view failure and when things go wrong. Um, if you dwell on it and you put your head in the sand, things are never going to get better. But if you use that as a learning experience and actually
Yeah.
view it as not a failure, what are the wins out of this and what we learned? How can we change? How can we grow? Then, that's where the real superpower is. And that is a real, real superpower without a doubt. So, no, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today, Sabah. If anybody
For
wants
having me.
yeah, no, if anybody wants to reach out to you or ask you about your journey and what's going on with yourself, where can they reach you?
DM me, just drop me a DM on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to chat through anything really, personal, professional. I think talking to people is what's helped me, so I'll always give back.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. We'll share the link to your details when the podcast goes live. Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Thanks, Bobby.